Understanding the real reason why we cannot deal with challenges in our lives, why we tend to procrastinate and self sabotage, and often head down destructive and defeating paths, is very important in order to conquer these and go beyond them. Very often, however, we tend to deal with these issues only on a surface level. But today, I am taking you to the root of the problem, the real reason. Someone once asked me, why is it he struggles so much to discipline himself to do something that he should be doing? And my reply was, when you see clearly the value it would bring you, and it becomes important enough to you, you would become disciplined enough to do it. But really and truly, this is only an on the surface reason and therefore an on the surface answer. Because how many of you know that eating healthy every day brings you the value and benefit of great health, yet you cannot discipline yourself to do it? You still reach out and go and eat junk food instead of the healthy food. And even doing something as simple as taking vitamin D3 drops every day to boost your immune system, especially if you live in a cold climate with little sun exposure, as being very important for your health. And yet, taking something as simple as vitamin D3, you can't and won't do it. You see, we tend to think that we are not disciplined enough. And that is true on the surface. But let us drill down to the real reason or the real problem. Why is it you're not disciplined? Why aren't we disciplined? And your answer might be, well, because we have poor habits and we get distracted very easily. So, drill down further. Why do we have poor habits and get distracted easily? And you can say, well, our senses cause us to be pulled towards sense objects, which we find is easy to do. And so we get distracted from what is really important. Therefore, the senses or the indriyas, the Sanskrit word for senses, are actually out of control. So, why are the senses out of control? So, let's drill down even further. We have the sense objects that pull us, and then we have the senses. And what's behind the senses that get pulled to the sense objects so very easily? Why are the senses out of control? When we drill down more, we're going to see behind the senses is the mind, a weak mind. And a buddhi or intellect, buddhi is the Sanskrit word for intellect, cannot discriminate properly right versus wrong, important versus unimportant. So when the person asked me, why is it he struggles to do something that's important? My answer should have really been, well, because you kind of have a weak mind and an improper intellect. So you do not have the strength to discriminate properly to make the right and beneficial choice. Now, I know this doesn't sound very nice. Could you imagine somebody coming to you and you tell them, well, really, the source of your problem is that you have a weak mind and a poor intellect. Now, it doesn't sound nice, but it is actually true. And this is true for him, for you, for me, and for anybody who struggles in life. Now, I was able to determine this as being the root of the problem, and I realized this hard truth when I took his question and I brought it into myself, and I love doing that. And when I looked at it and I brought that question to myself, I realized there was something that I needed to do that was very important. I recognized how important it was, but I just wasn't doing it. I couldn't do it. And I realized that, well, Sandra, you've got a weak mind. You're being controlled and you're being led in a different direction that you need to be in, go in. So When you have a strong mind, really and truly, a strength of mind, a steady mind, brings discipline and good habits as the results. Our ancient texts of India, called the Upanishads, and for those viewers who are of different religious backgrounds, this is not religion, okay? These are books, in my opinion, of wisdom. Our ancient texts of India, called the Upanishads, teach us in one of its books, the Kathopanishad in 136, that one who possesses a discriminating intellect, or vivek, which is the Sanskrit word for discriminating intellect, that is right understanding, chooses right versus wrong, whose mind is controlled, then your senses would be under control. You will then not be led astray easily. So when our intellect is not operating properly, when our mind is not steady and strong, but instead it's fickle and restless, when our senses are behaving like wild horses, we end up making choices that work against us. We do wrong deeds, we commit sin. We struggle to handle life challenges, and we end up being moody, depressive, anxious, and fearful. And this is why most people tend to go to God and say, "Oh God, please, God, help me." When we really need to work with God by going to the root of the problem and strengthen our mind, get the right intellect, and tame our senses. So, we know what we have to do now. Let us drill down a little further. We know we have the sense objects. We have the senses that are being pulled by the sense objects. We have the mind. If the mind is weak, it's going to be pulled by the senses. What's behind the mind and the intellect that causes all of this to happen? What is responsible for a weakened intellect, a wrong intellect, a weakened mind, and unruly senses? What is behind it all? It is consciousness, the individual self that has let go of the reins, allowing the mind to go haywire. In other words, consciousness has become unaware and lost and entangled. Now we can even drill down further, but we're not going to go further because I know all of us by now know for sure one thing, that we're consciousness, that we exist, we are, I am. Okay? So from there, we can take certain steps to make some corrective put some corrective action into place. Now, when consciousness is unaware and lost, it means that nobody is present and watching mind. Nobody is present and developing intellect. And what happens? You end up being pulled now by the senses, which feels easy, but is actually not beneficial to you. So you do the easy thing. It's easy to sit on the sofa and eat junk food and procrastinate. This is weakness. And this weakness actually is powerful and strong. But this is not real strength. True strength is when you, consciousness, can actually discriminate rightly. In other words, have vivek, which is the Sanskrit word. You can control the mind, strengthen it, make it steady and focused, and you can tame the senses or the indriyas. So how can you control all of these and get all of these right, working together well? Well, the first thing you must do, I see, is stop blaming mind, because this is a new age thing. Everybody blames the mind, okay? Mind can only do what you, consciousness, allow it to do. Realize deeply that you, consciousness, are the one who has let go all the reins and mind, so you are the real culprit. And if you are in charge, mind will be used by you. Mind is there for you to use it. to do what you needed to do, but instead of it using you. So the second thing I say is stay in constant awareness. In other words, stay alert and attentive, watching continuously who is leading who. Is it you or the mind or the senses? Who is in charge of your life? These two things alone can put you in the right position and state to develop the right intellect, to control and steady the mind, to strengthen it, and to tame the senses. But I will also give you some practical ways to help you do this on a day-to-day basis. So here are some practical things you can do on a day-to-day basis. And the first one is recommended is to eat sattvic or pure food. And sattvic is really to represent the quality of the food you're eating, pure food. In other words, eat more raw veggies and fruit, less processed food. Cook and eat as much as you possibly can at home. Prepare your own food, in other words, and eat vegetarian food. Now, ancient teachings say that this is a way to train the mind and the senses. And the reason being is that the more people you allow to interfere with your food, their thought energy and their nature or their gunas, as it's called in Sanskrit, that vibration gets transferred into the food onto you, which affects you. So be careful from whom you eat. Could you imagine you have angry, frustrated, hateful people preparing your food, and that quality gets transferred in the food and you absorb that vibration into you? That affects you. They have unhealthy, unhygienic qualities. All these things get transferred onto you through eating. Many years ago, I belonged to a group where we would get together every Thursday and we would have spiritual meetings. We'd sing religious songs and have discussions. And after that, right after, we would get together in the kitchen and we would prepare food to be able to donate it to an organization that fed the needy. And what we would do, just imagine we already prayed, we're in a certain vibration, a different state of being, a more loving state of being, and then we go and handle the food, and while we're preparing it, we sing religious songs. What a wonderful way to affect the food that is being passed on to people who are already downtrodden. This vibration gets transferred to these people, and that is how food needs to be prepared. Not as rushing around in a kitchen and chop, 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 and telling people off. That is not a nice way to handle food. Now, the other thing is to note is when you kill an animal, know that that animal shrieks in pain, and that energy and vibration remain in the flesh, in the cells, and that lower energy and vibration and qualities of that animal get passed on to you when you eat it. Agitated spirits and lower thoughts, be careful of that being transferred onto you through the foods you eat. When you eat plant-based foods, and I'm not talking about the ones that you buy already prepared in the grocery, on the grocery shelves. I'm talking about you get the fresh vegetables and you cook it at home. These foods contain a subtler energy. They're not gross like an animal. When an animal is killed and you cut this thing, there is pain there. When you cut the food, the veggies, it's a subtler energy. It's not gross like the animal, and therefore it's a better alternative to consume. So remember this whenever you are eating, that you are not eating merely flesh or food. You're actually eating energy and vibration and qualities. When you eat pure high energy foods, the senses start to come under control, as you're not running after the smell, sight, and taste of what we call tamasic food, which is low energy food. And so you're choosing sensibly. When you make a change in the way you eat, I suggest to make the change gradually. Then you're going to find it an easier transition to the way you eat. Many years ago, I was planning a trip to India, and I knew a year ahead I was going to India, and where I was going, I was not going to be able to get coffee to drink. So, and I was a big coffee drinker at that time. I would drink 4 to 5 cups a day, which is absolutely too much for one human being to drink on a daily basis, in my opinion, because that means I'm addicted. So I decided within that year, I was going to slowly and slowly reduce the number of cups of coffee I was drinking per day. So by the end of that year, I had stopped completely. And that lasted for many years, actually. Now, doctors are going to tell you the reason to stop slowly is because they affect the neurotransmitters of the brain. So you have a tilt in the balance, in the functioning of the inhibitory neurotransmitters and the excitatory neurotransmitters. In other words, the senses. Okay? So you see, doctors and scientists deal with the hardware. Ancient masters dealt with the software. What is really running in the background? And what's running in the background is the mind, okay? And the senses and the intellect. So the ancient masters brought our attention to these. Even when you're trying to make a change in your spiritual life, some people are now embarking on a spiritual life. And what they try to do, they try to rush everything. They want to get it. They want to become some big guru, some teacher, some, because they look up to them. And what they fail to realize that even in your spiritual life, start slowly, choose one thing, get that going, implement it, and then what happens? You start to gain strength instead of becoming discouraged. You see, if you try to do too much to begin with, your mind will start to act up because it would find that it's too much. And you may find that it will start to resent and retaliate. And you would end up being back to square one when nobody was watching it before. So don't try to do too much immediately. Don't try to become some big guru or saint or pastor. It took them steps to get there. Even with regard to your food, take one step at a time to implement changes, and you're going to find that it will be more long lasting. The mind wouldn't act up, the mind would succumb, the senses get trained, the intellect is going to be used in the right way. The second thing you can do on a daily basis is to ensure that you feed your mind with healthy thoughts. Be watchful over everything you expose yourself to, all the ideas and concepts and opinions that are out there. And today we have tons of that and easily accessible. You have to look at what would weaken your look at what would weaken your resolve and what would actually strengthen it. Expose yourself to encouraging ideas and any knowledge you acquire. I recommend very highly. Do not be very gullible. Even what I share with you, I encourage you to examine all the knowledge you're acquiring. Examine it, analyze it, look for the truth in it, and therefore you will discriminate rightly. I once heard this great influencer, and he has passed away now, but he left this for many people to listen to. And one of the things he said is that, in his opinion, and I'm not quoting him word for word, taking the essence of his message, basically what he was saying is that if you didn't create something in this life to leave behind that continues on, then you're a total failure. You were not successful in this life. Now, you see, these type of teachings, don't listen to them. Please discard them, because these are the very teachings that are going to make you become weak. Some people, Even realized masters could say, well, okay, well, he didn't become self-realized, so he's a total failure. Or he have failed in other ways. I want to tell you this. Don't listen to stuff like that for people to define what success is for you. Know that if you take at least one quality in your life and try to improve and become a better human being, that already you're a success. And even if you haven't improved to a great degree, but you're making little effort, know that every effort is a success. So please do not listen to people like this. And that is why you have to be very careful when you sit and listen to many teachers. The third thing I would say is when you're in a weakened state, please get elevating and right support. And I emphasize that word, right. When you're weak, you need help. Not for it to become a permanent crutch, but just to give you a little lift up, to gain strength, so that you do not crumble when that support is removed. Instead, you end up being fortified. The other thing I want you to be very cautious about is your alone time. Aloneness must be brought into a place of balance. If you spend too much alone time, it can actually weaken you and take you into dark places. So balance it and use aloneness for a right purpose, which is for meditation and self-discovery. And that is why I'm one of these people who believe that many people need to go back out to work, because if they do not go out to work, they will not develop a strength of character and strength of mind and right intellect and senses if they do not know how to interact with challenging people, people with difficult personalities. And it's very important for you to know how to deal with people like this, with these type of qualities, in order to become strong. So I do recommend people need to socialize up to a point so that they can gain strength of mind. The other thing that you can do, the fourth one is, I say, develop faith and detachment, because these will strengthen the mind with a conviction. So I always recommend pray. When you have faith, it strengthens. When you doubt, it weakens. When you see the worst in a situation, not for the purpose of preparing to deal with it, but seeing it just as being negative, what happens? The mind weakens because doubt is there. And when you're too attached to what you want and to what you have, and if you cannot get it how and when you want, or you lose what you have, you can become weak and devastated, and you struggle and you become miserable. And that is why ancient teachings emphasize a lot on the power of detachment and its importance in your strength of mind and spiritual evolution. The fifth thing I see on a daily basis that you can develop is focus and concentration, to be able to steady and strengthen your mind. And some of the ways you can develop focus and concentration is meditation. But again, when you meditate, make sure you don't over meditate in the beginning. Make sure you introduce it in a very gradual way into your life, okay? Otherwise, it will become too overwhelming. Meditation helps you to focus. It pacifies you, it quietens the mind down, it calms you, and it starts to train the mind. And you become very peaceful. The next thing you do is, I would say, you can also do control of breath, because it brings focus to control that breath up and down. And therefore, it steadies the mind. Practice the concentration through activities. Many artists and writers, anybody who belongs to the world of art, they get very engrossed in the activity. And when you get engrossed in the activity, it means you're focused and concentrated. And when you're focused and concentrated, the mind quiets down. So you get a steadiness occurring. and engage in something that's very purposeful. Don't become too idle, because when you are idle, it creates an opening for you to become weak, and you become bored and useless to yourself and useless to society. And you start to develop very impure thoughts. So these are some of the ways to bring the mind under control. But you will have success only in conscious awareness. A strong mind is not just a steady and focused mind to accomplish something in life and to be able to handle life's challenges and struggle less. And of course, these are absolutely necessary. But a strong mind is also a pure mind. When the mind is steady and it is pure, it actually builds character, versus an impure mind that is sharp and focused and steady, which can, that kind of mind can actually become full of itself or egotistical. It can be very powerful and therefore very controlling and therefore manipulative, and it can destroy, do wrong, harm, and hurt others just to have its own way. And if you have a weak mind, then you can easily be manipulated. And we see this happening in today's world. It's very, very evident. So when we are retraining the mind to strengthen it, our goal should always be to steady the mind to achieve what you need to get done and handle life's challenges better, to sharpen the intellect or buddhi so that you can choose right versus wrong, and to purify the mind so that it becomes loving and more caring toward others. So we dealt with how to study the mind. So let us learn now how to sharpen the intellect or buddhi. The first thing I would say I recommend is by truly becoming conscious and deeply aware of the choices you make, the right versus the wrong, bad over good, because it is easy to choose the bad. Let me run and grab the junk food, which is not good for me, versus going and making the effort to cook something that is healthy and beneficial to me. Choosing temporary pleasure over permanent joy. Permanent joy is when you look within yourself to go beyond all these negatives that you've created within yourself. And the second one I would say is start using the intellect or the buddhi for higher purposes in order to sharpen it, rather than continuously using it for lower purposes, which dull it. When every day your choices are, oh, let me see, should I wear a red outfit or a white outfit? Should I use this foundation or that foundation? And if your life is around those kind of choices continuously and you don't up it up to another level, how can I do things that are beneficial, that are going to make me progress in life, that will help my consciousness to evolve? This is how your buddhi is going to sharpen, how your intellect will sharpen. So now we've dealt with sharpening the intellect and buddhi. How do we go about purifying that mind of ours? Well, to develop a pure mind, I would say start reading scriptures. Do things, engage in divine things, such as reading scriptures and, ancient texts of wisdom. Acquire higher knowledge, as you're doing right now by being here. And of course, as I always like to say, apply it. Don't become a hoarder of knowledge. There is a saying, use it to increase it. If you don't use it, you will lose it. Okay? And that applies for everything in life. If you have gifts and talents that you're not using, you're going to lose it. Okay? Use it and you're going to find it develops energy, it develops momentum, and it increases. So use it to increase it. Develop devotion. And devotion is like a devotion to God. Now, Indian people have a way they develop devotion towards their spiritual teachers, their gurus. And this is so beautiful because when you develop that, your heart becomes kinder and more loving and caring, not just to your guru, but it's a way of developing care and kindness toward others. Help others, do good, and take your mind off from yourself. When it's always all about me, how could that be a pure mind? So take your mind off yourself and direct it towards doing good for others. Keep company with sacred people, such as spiritual teachers and spiritual seekers, earnest seekers. Don't go hang around with these spiritual people who are hoarders of knowledge, but the ones who are truly making earnest effort, those who acquire the knowledge and apply it through experience to become wiser human beings. Engage in divine conversations continuously, because these will help purify the mind. It takes it to a different state and place, so you get a different nature coming out of you. And I know this is a work in progress for all of us. There's so many people who engage in conversations, in profanity, in gross conversations. Cut all that out if you want to purify the mind and get the mind to truly be strong in the right way. With the right buddhi or intellect and a strong mind, which is steady and pure, consciousness, you are now in a powerful place to control the senses or the indriyas. A strong mind plus right intellect will result in discipline and good habits, and vice versa. So, how to control the senses? Because now we've already dealt with steadying the mind, making it focus, purifying the mind, and getting the right intellect. So we've dealt with the mind. We're working our way back now from the mind and the right intellect. It's strong, it's pure, it's right, it's being used right. This now is in a powerful place to control the senses that are drawn by sense objects. So how to control the senses or indriyas that could easily lead you astray and toward only sense objects is to use the senses for a higher purpose. So we normally use the eyes to see, right? The senses for seeing. We are going to address how to see differently, how to smell, how to taste, how to touch, how to hear, okay, differently. We're going to use these senses for a higher purpose. Yes, you can use the senses to go after sense objects, but do so only up to a point. You need to park this vehicle of transportation, your body that transports you, consciousness. You need to park it in a safe house, okay? In a safe neighborhood. There must be a level of comfort for it in order to even pursue any kind of spiritual life. And therefore you need money to buy this house, and therefore you would need to get an education to do all this and go buy the books and whatever to educate yourself. So these are like sense objects that you have to be drawn towards, but you're going to use it only up to a point as is needed for a level of comfort in this world. Just look at spiritual teachers and gurus, what they have built, and it is really a medium just to serve their work. Some people who are on the spiritual path, they tend to reject this type of, sense objects. They think that living in a nice house and having a good job make them unspiritual because they feel they're so spiritual, they need to reject these things. No, 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 you don't need to do that. Just get what is needed as is needed. And this is being spiritual, right? Otherwise, if you don't, it's really a lack of understanding. Okay? So, how do we use our senses for a higher purpose so as to retrain them, to tame the senses? So, instead of using the eyes now, it's not going to be about, you're not going to use the eyes to keep wanting more and more in the world. just for the sake of having more and coveting other people's objects, being attached to things of the world. Instead, you're going to use your eyes to see. You're going to use the sense of seeing to see good in others, to read sacred literature, and to apply it. Use the ears now to listen to pure sounds with higher vibration. Listen to divine sounds and sacred stories and wisdom and apply it. Use your hands not to touch all the jewelry and sense objects out there all the time, all the worldly objects that can draw you down the wrong path, but use your hands for the higher purpose of serving others, to do good in the world, and to bring your hands together and bow humbly. Bow humbly to others. And bowing humbly does not mean to be foolish, okay? It means you're looking at others, you're bowing to the reverence in each one of us, to divinity that resides in all of us, to the God that exists in all of us, okay? Use your tongue, not merely for tasting delicious food and running after spicy foods, but to speak kindly. Use the tongue to say good words, speak good of others. And if you cannot speak good of others and be kind, then you know what? Say nothing. Stay quiet. And use the tongue to pray. Pray differently. Pray positively and thankfully. Use the nose, not just to smell the tamasic food, spicy, low energy food, to stimulate your taste buds and lead you down the wrong path, but use the sense of nose for divine sense, such as incense, that creates a difference, right? If you notice a different type of aura, try burning it in your home if you've never done it before, and you're going to feel a change in the atmosphere, a different energy in the room. Okay, so these are some of the ways that you could start retraining your senses. A strong mind does not mean a hard mind or a harsh mind or an overly disciplined mind to the extent where it is very rigid. You know, there are some people who are so disciplined, they've created journals for the year and they have every day and every minute of that day all charted out, all planned out, even to have a good time. That is scheduled into their journal. That kind of mind cannot enjoy life too much. It wouldn't know spontaneity, how to have, just to have fun spontaneously or enjoy life spontaneously. Okay, it's not scheduled at this moment. That type of mind, it's very good to be disciplined, but that type of mind is too rigid. And that type of mind will not be resilient to change. And a strong mind contains resiliency, the quality of resiliency. A strong mind is a steady and focused mind that is not easily disturbed, and it has a strong resolve and willpower to get something done. It is also a pure mind, which allows you to act rightly while you're doing whatever you need to get done in this world. It has proper intellect to discriminate rightly, and therefore a strong mind that is steady and pure and focused develops means you have strength of character. And all this combination allows you to grow, mature, and become spiritually strong and expansive. It helps you to create differently in a more sacred way, to live differently with consideration of how you're impacted, as well how you impact others and this planet you call home. You become more peaceful with a purified mind as you become less and less attached and entangled to things out there, things of the world, wisely using those to the extent needed to support you. I will leave you now with two very important quotations. And the first one is from the ancient text of India, and it's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 635. And Arjuna was questioning Krishna on the mind. And this is Lord Krishna's response. He said, The mind is restless, no doubt, and difficult to curb, but it can be brought under control by repeated practice of meditation and exercise of dispassion or detachment, and of course, everything I've shared here with you today. The second quote is from the Holy Bible in Romans 8:6, which says, "For to be carnally minded, that is, things of the world, is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace." So I leave you now by saying, let your intellect be right, your mind strong, steady, and focused and pure, and senses tamed so that they can bend to you, not you to them, so you could flow better between the banks of the positives and negatives in life.